everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us on a Friday afternoon for our final breakout session of our Leadership and Career Conference. My name is Adrienne Jensen-Duray. I'm one of the student involvement staff members. I'm just here to introduce our presenter for today's breakout session. First, just wanted to start with a quick notice to you all that we are recording this session. We plan to share the recordings of all of today's programs with everyone at some date next week, and we will get in contact with you and send you an email to help you figure out how to access those recordings. And to get us started, I'm going to share a link in the chat. I'm sorry, that was the wrong link. I'll share a different link in the chat. And if you could just click on that link and check in for this session, again, that will help us know who's here and make sure we can get the recording to you. So with that, I will introduce our presenter today, who is Jordan Webb, our Student Engagement Coordinator from the Office of Student Involvement, who will be leading us through a session talking about self-care, which is always important, but more now than ever as we are all in this virtual world. So I will turn it over to Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you, Adrienne. And thanks everyone for being here today. I know it's been a long day, but I think this is an important topic. And yeah, so I'm ready to kind of jump in and talk a little bit more about how to take care of yourself in this atmosphere of 2020 where we're working from our homes, we're working on our computers nonstop. We got a lot going on. And so really what I wanted to talk to you today, also, that's me. Hello, welcome. I work in the Student Involvement Office, and I support specifically all of our student organizations on campus. So if you have any questions about our community, how to join our organizations, or how to get involved on campus in general, feel free to connect with me after this session, and we can kind of have a deeper discussion about that. But what I wanted to talk to you today about is essentially the concept of work-life balance. This is probably something that you have heard of at least once before, but it's kind of hard. It can be hard to understand exactly what that means. So we're going to dive a little bit more into what exactly does work-life balance mean? Why is that a good thing for me? And how can I work towards having a good work-life balance? Because it is something that you need to put time and effort into. We're also in you know, a distance learning environment, a distance working environment perhaps. And the responsibilities that we have in our life aren't going away because of all of that. And so, you know, what are specific tips for this digital virtual world that we're in right now? How can we be more successful in that? And then, you know, this is not, my opinion isn't the only opinion, and it's also not, you know, I'm not the only source of information. And so as we're chatting today, if you have any examples from your life that you're comfortable sharing, you know, feel free to unmute and to share those things with us. Really curious to see and hear the strategies that our students have been using during this time, in the same way, you know, that working people with children, like everyone has had their work-life balance impacted. So would love to hear from you as well if anyone has any specific examples. How exactly are you able to interact today? Because I don't want to be talking at you for just, you know, the 30 minutes. So we will have some interactive things coming up. Number one, we're going to use a platform called Slido to ask a couple of questions of you to kind of get a sense of what you're looking for, and just kind of how you're feeling at work-life balance. We're going to have other questions throughout the presentation, so feel free to either put in the chat if you have any examples or any thoughts that you might have, or if you would like to speak, that would be great too. But if you're not speaking, if you could stay muted, that would be great, just so, because, you know, our time is limited today. But let's jump into, we're going to jump onto an external website really quick called Slido. So you're going to go to slido.com. If you have played any like digital or virtual games over during the pandemic, it's going to be very similar. You go to this website, and then you're going to put in this 5-digit number, 92834. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat because it might go away when I leave this page. So 92834. Perfect. So let's hop out of here. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Okay. And now we're gonna hop back into here. And this should work. Okay, so you can either scan that QR code or you can enter the number here, and hopefully that will let you into the room. Hopefully, is this working for folks? And like a thumbs up or anything like that if it's working for you. Let's see. And the first thing that I wanted to ask is just essentially what brought you here. So what are you hoping to gain today? Did you just like hear the name of the title and you're like, that sounds interesting, I want to know more? Yeah. So what brought you here? And if you can't think of anything, that's okay. Riveting title, there we go. Okay, I know it's working now, so that's great. Thank you. Or if anyone would like to share, yeah, if anyone wants to unmute and share, that'd be great too. And we'll give folks about 30 seconds. Trying to maintain mental stability. Want to have more options to keep my spirits high. Okay, okay, great. Hopefully, yeah, so I hope we can cover all of these things. Wanted to know how it looks like. Okay, great. Yeah, so we're gonna do kind of like a very deep dive into this and what exactly we're talking about when we talk about work-life balance. So this is good to see. So thanks everyone. We got another question. So we're thinking about work-life balance in general. We're gonna do a word cloud. So if folks would indulge me in sharing maybe 3 or 4 adjectives that you would use to describe your work-life balance right now. So when you think about all of the things that you have to do and the amount of time that you have to do them, what comes to mind? Is that something that makes you happy? Is it something that makes you energized? Is it something that makes you nervous? Unproductive, okay. Oh man, we're seeing some not great words here, huh? Hectic, unproductive, turbulent, mundane, fearful. Okay, okay. So I don't know if we have, okay, overwhelmed. Yep, yep. And I wanted to make a word cloud, and I'm sharing, responses from students in this way because I want you to see that it's not just you, right? You're feeling overwhelmed. You're feeling all of these negative emotions, but you're not alone in that. And it's something that all of us experience. And like I said, it's something that we have to put time and effort into to not have those feelings anymore when we think about all of the things that we have to do. Great, thanks everyone. I've got one more. And this is just on a scale of 1 to 10. When you think about all of the things that you need to do right now, where would you rank that? So if number 1 was like, oh, it's summer vacation, I'm chilling. And 10 would be, I don't know how I'm going to do everything that I need to do. So let's see what people say. So 10 is not good and 1 is good. Yep, yep. We're seeing a pattern here. And that's probably why you came to the session, right? Because you're feeling a little overwhelmed. But like I said before, again, you're not alone, and it's a problem. It's a problem for everyone, especially being in college. This is an especially busy time in your life because you're thinking about the future too. So there's a lot of pressure also to succeed, to find a career, and that only makes the problem worse, right? Great. So thanks everyone for indulging me in that. I'm going to hop back over to our presentation really quickly. Yeah, so thanks. And let's talk a little bit more about what work-life balance means when we talk about that as a phrase. Because I think all three words in this phrase are really important, and they all mean really different things. And sometimes when we're talking about like leadership and like career skills and things like that, um, these phrases, it's hard to know exactly what they mean, right? So I wanted to break down when we talk about work-life balance, what exactly do we mean? So there's three components. So number one is your work. And work doesn't just have to mean what I do as a career. It means all of the responsibilities that you have in your life that you need to actively work towards accomplishing those things. So it's not just getting an A on the test, right? It's all of the homework that you put in beforehand. It's not just, it's also your family, right? If you have a child or if you are at home right now, you probably have more responsibilities right now than you would have if this were a normal time, right? So you're having a lot more family responsibilities too. You're trying to figure out how to work in this environment, right? So when we talk about work-life balance, people hinge on that work part and think it's, oh, it's only classes. Oh, it's only my job. But it's really everything that you have to do that will make you a responsible and successful human. The life part, you know, the life means your life. So how are you living your life? What are you doing in a way that, you know, fulfills you? Because at the end of the day, yeah, we want a good job, we want a lot of money, but you also want to be happy. You also want to do things that fulfill you, and you don't want to live your life like we see SpongeBob over here, where he's just like running himself into the ground, and it never ends, right? We want something outside of those responsibilities that we have, and that's really what makes us us, right? So I think it's really important to respect that about ourselves and to kind of celebrate the things that make us unique. So that's what I mean by life, is celebrating you as a person, however you best need to be celebrated, and to be taken care of. And then there's that balance part, right? Because like I said, we can do really good in that work responsibility aspect, but it's worthless if we don't also have things outside of those responsibilities that we can attach and connect to. So just in the same way, we got to think about our responsibilities and also, you know, how we cultivate our own beings. We got to work out those two things. How do they go in concert together? How do they fit together? Because there are going to be times where you're really stressed about your responsibilities. And that's going to be the number one thing that you have to do, just because you got to take that test. You got to go to that interview, whatever. But it brings it back to the balance piece of, how am I taking care of myself after that? How am I rewarding myself after I've done a good job and I've taken care of the things that I need to do? So hopefully this makes sense to folks. And again, any questions or anything like that, throw it in the chat, and we can talk about it. But let's dive a little bit more into each kind of aspect. So number one, let's talk about the work. So all of the responsibilities and things like that, like I said, add up to the work of work-life balance. So when we talk about having our responsibilities and completing them to the best of our ability, it's not just like, you don't just like show up to work and hope that you can do your job and that you do a great job. You have to put in the work beforehand. Or maybe it's better from an academic example. You don't just show up to the quiz and think that you know all the answers, right? You put in work beforehand to make you more successful and to make you more efficient in what you're doing. Because your responsibilities are never going to go away, right? But if we can do things in our lives that make our use of time more efficient from the work perspective, then that frees up a lot of our other time for other things that fulfill us and give us back that energy that might get taken away from us from our responsibilities. So what types of things can we do to make our work lives, so our organized, responsible lives, more effective? just being organized in general. So, you know, having a planner, having something that you go to where you can keep track of, this is everything that I've going on this week, this month, this semester, this year. We could do a whole other presentation about being organized, but just thinking of it from that perspective of, in my life, how is the best way for me to get information? So like for me, myself, I really like to-do lists and marking things off of my to-do lists. It doesn't work for everyone. Everything in this presentation is kind of a question that I'm posing to you of what is the best way for you to accomplish this? So being organized looks a lot different for a lot of different people. So I'll leave it there. In the same way, time management, using that time efficiently and to the best of your ability. And we'll talk about that more a little bit in the further slides. Delegation, you can, and when we talk about delegating, that means essentially giving tasks or responsibilities to someone else as it makes sense. So you don't want to, you know, there are some things that you can't delegate. You can't get someone to take that test for you, or maybe to drive you to your job or something like that. But what opportunities exist in your life to give other folks an opportunity to have that responsibility? And delegation also means like knowing your limits and knowing when you need help. Because sometimes we sign up for everything in the sun and think we can do everything, but guess what? We can't. So delegation is also knowing when to say, hey, you know what? I thought I could do this, but I can't. And being okay with that too. So that is the work side of things. And in a virtual environment specifically, how can we succeed more in our work? I have a few tips up here. Again, this isn't the end all be all. Number one, know the tools that you have at your disposal. So do your research on what is available to you with the platforms that you have, especially for things like distance learning, and use those things. I think we think of, you know, the current generation of students as very tech savvy, but that can sometimes be for only certain things, like certain apps and things like that. We have calendars on our computers, on our phones. We got to use things like that. Have you ever just popped into Canvas and kind of browse through and see how are all the different ways that I can interact with this course, or that I can gain access to the teacher? Yeah, so, and another great option is Zoom also, you know, so exploring your Zoom capabilities a little bit more. If I wanted to host my own meeting with a group of friends, like how could we do breakout rooms or something like that to have a productive conversation? We really limit ourselves with the things that we can accomplish because we don't know what's out there. So knowing what's available to you and what you can do with those things. Number two, avoid multitasking. And I know it's really, everybody says like, oh, I'm so good at multitasking, blah, blah, blah. It's not a thing to be proud of. It's not a thing to be proud of, unfortunately. And I know it's, you know, can be tempting to throw that Netflix show up on the TV, or whatever that might be. But you're going to retain less and less information, the more kind of things that you're tuned into. So that's another, when we talk about being intentional. Okay, sorry about that, everyone.
No, you're good, Jordan. Welcome back.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, everyone. Yeah, and then the last bullet point on here, finding a schedule that works for you. Like I said, everything in this, all of these things that I'm saying are for you. So if it works for you to wake up at 6 in the morning, good luck with that. I don't like that. If it works for you to go to sleep at 3 in the morning, again, I'm not going to do that either. But if that is most conducive to your schedule and like when you think you're best at like knocking out an essay or whatever that might be, you need to figure those things out for yourself. And hopefully, you know, you're far enough in the semester that from an academic standpoint that we know these things and what's best for us. But it's always good to key into these things, even with like our family lives, with our work schedules and things like that. Is this the best time that I could be doing this? So, yeah. And then I like our photo here in the corner. It's kind of getting at what I was saying with the multitasking, that it just, you know, you're more likely to do something in error. Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker through some of our other content. But now we're on the life aspect of work-life balance, right? So as I said before, when we're thinking about life, we're thinking about you as a person, all of the unique things that make you you, and all of the unique things that kind of give you energy, give you passion in your life, and also give you kind of like the strength to go forth and do all of those things that you need to do. So when we think of this idea of we need to put time, effort, and energy into ourselves to be successful, a lot of people use this term self-care. So I encourage folks to look up self-care after this, if you're not quite sure of what that means. But it's, you know, little strategies that we can incorporate into our lives, and kind of breaking down what are we doing each day for ourselves, and how is that fulfilling us? How is that, you know, providing value to my life? So there's the 6 areas up here. So I'll give an example from emotional. So emotional self-care would be, you know, if I'm having a really stressful day and I feel myself getting really, really angry, just, you know, checking in with myself of why am I feeling angry? What's the underlying reason? Maybe I didn't eat lunch, or, you know, maybe it was a specific thing that someone said that got me really angry, you know? But just checking in with yourself and realizing that you're angry is on the road to kind of like, okay, like, let's figure this out. Everything's going to be all right. So kind of checking in with your emotions that way. So I'm not going to give an example for each type of self-care, but I'd encourage you to kind of look up these categories and areas, because it'll help you realize like what are little things that you might not be doing, or you might not be putting emphasis on, that are actually really helpful for you in your daily life, to have a, you know, fulfilling experience with whatever you're doing. And then we got some tips here for basically how can we do that self-care in a virtual environment. Like I said, checking in with yourself constantly. This is a really weird time where I feel like time is going by super slow, but also super quickly at the same time. So, you know, there are some times where we just kind of need to check in and say, you know, what's going on right now? How am I experiencing the world around me? Because you might find some interesting thoughts there, or some interesting things that you might be able to do that will be more fulfilling for you. Exploring your hobbies and interests. It can be especially difficult right now to have like the mental energy to do that. But that's really important, and it's what makes you unique, right? And for a lot of people, those hobbies and interests are what keep them going, to actually meet all of their responsibilities and stuff like that. So it can be tough, you know, especially midterm season, and things like this, where it kind of pulls us away from those things that give us joy and give us that fulfillment outside of our responsibilities. So kind of checking in with that too. Getting good sleep, very, very, very important. I know you don't get a lot of sleep as a college student, or that's the stereotype anyways, but you can't be your best self if you don't get rest. And so, you know, getting good sleep would be an example of physical self-care, so that you get those 8 hours and you wake up and you feel like a fully functioning human that can take on the world. And then the last tip that I want to put on here is that it's okay to not be okay. The world is changing around us every day, and it's affecting all of us in different ways. So being aware of that and kind of giving yourself that credit, I guess, that you don't need to be working on an essay every free moment of the day. You also don't need to be like learning a language or, I don't know, playing video games or something like that, whatever you think is your self-care. We don't need to schedule every single second of our lives, but checking in and knowing when we need those kind of resources for ourselves. And then there's the balance piece. So like I said, there needs to be a balance between the responsibilities that we have and what gives us personal fulfillment. And so I did kind of like a word cloud of different strategies that we might take in order to make sure we're finding that balance. So like finding small little things that you can incorporate into your day that meet one of those areas of self-care for you, using your hobbies and interests as an outlet. So like if you're upset about something, maybe you go cool off with coloring in your coloring book or something like that, or playing your favorite game, or I don't know. What else do I want to specify on here? Being aware of social media and news. So I think being digital, we also never get away from our screens. So checking in with yourself in that same way too of, I don't know if you've heard of this term doom scrolling, where you just keep looking at the news and it's not looking great, but you keep looking at it anyway. Know when it's too much. Sometimes it's too much, so being aware of patterns and trends like that, and not being afraid to check in with yourself about them. So these are all examples of how you can find balance in your daily life. And then in a virtual environment, some other tips. I know we're right up on time, but this is we're near the end. So here are some tips in a virtual environment, trying to limit the quote unquote work that you got to get done to one specific device if you can. I know a lot of folks attend class like on their phone, or you might not have like a laptop or a tablet or something like that. But if you are able to do this, I highly encourage it. And I think you'll see a big difference in how you view your time. Because if you are in front of the same computer for work, for school, for meeting up with friends, it's all going to start to feel the same. It already feels the same, right? But it will help you create that distinction between kind of what's work time and what is like fun or fulfilling time. Setting boundaries in your life is really, really important, especially now, where it doesn't feel like we have a lot of boundaries, or maybe that's just me. I don't know. Living with others, especially. And so, you know what you can handle. And other people don't know that unless you tell them. And so this can come up in a lot of different areas of your life. So I work specifically with our student organizations and their leaders. And so I tell those folks, if you're a president of an organization or something like that, you need to tell people when you're off. So if you're texting me at 1 a.m. about some problem with our organization, I'm not going to get to you until the morning. It's not that big of it can't be that big of an issue unless the house is on fire or something that can wait until the morning, right? So various examples like that. Also with social media and things like that, if you need some sort of secondary app to keep you accountable of like, okay, 30 minutes of screen time in this app. There are also like desktop applications that will limit like what you can access and things like that. So trying to be inventive and not thinking of it as a punishment either. It's not a punishment to yourself. It's a dedication to yourself that you're using your time to the best of your ability. And then just being, we're living through a major historical event right now. And so just giving folks the same grace and understanding that you would want in these circumstances. And just being open and honest about what you can and can't handle. So it all it all stems back to just having good communication, not only with others, but yourself about what you can handle and how you can handle it. And I think that's it. So I'm not sure if any other questions came by in the
Yeah.
chat.
Thanks, Jordan. I do see one question in the chat that's asking, how can we feel better during midterms or another really busy time of the year when you just don't have as much time for yourself and for some of those life and balance pieces?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it also can stem back to like long-term planning. So if we know that midterms are going to be really busy and difficult for us, like that would have been an opportunity earlier in the semester to say like, okay, I know I have 3 tests this week, so we really got to study one of them super far in advance. Or maybe planning out that specific week of, okay, we got 3 tests. I know I should probably study like 4 hours for each one of them. Let's block that time off in my calendar. So you're kind of planning ahead of time instead of saying, I got to study for this test. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we got to study for it because we got to get a good grade. Kind of, that's almost setting boundaries for yourself as far as like, you can only spend so much time on something, right? And so kind of thinking of it from that way of kind of planning it out math-wise of, okay, 3 hours, I'm going to study this day, so that, you know, you still have time to maybe watch an episode or 2 of a show or something like that. Whatever those small interjections into a busy week like that you can do, I promise you, if you take a break for 20 or 30 minutes from your responsibilities, that it's not going to have a large effect in the grand scheme of things, and that you're going to feel better with whatever that experience was. Even if it was just going on a walk, getting away from your screen, it's going to energize you and it's going to kind of refocus you too. So that was kind of a long answer. I apologize, but I would say just kind of like planning out what that week might look like. The more that we plan and organize exactly, it'll feel like less that way too. It'll feel like less of a burden if you calendar it out, so that, you know, you say, okay, 7 to 9, I'm studying, and then after 9, I'm good. So I hope that answered your question. That was a few different suggestions, but it depends on your specific situation and kind of how you like to check in with yourself and kind of find that passion and that balance away from work.
That was great advice, Jordan. And I think another strategy that I use sometimes is if I know and I'm looking ahead at my calendar and I know there's going to be a really busy week, whether it's because of work and events or when I was a student because of exams and projects. As you're doing that long-term planning, think, is there something you can do for yourself that's going to make you feel good maybe the week before your really busy week? Can you take a little bit more time that week before that almost kind of, you know, helps to fill up some of that self-care ahead of time that will help to carry through into the busy week, or that you can look back on and say, oh my gosh, I had a great time on that hike over the weekend. I'm so glad I made time for it, knowing that you're really busy and kind of just don't have as much attention to give to some of those other aspects.
Yeah, and then I'm seeing a question from Natasha in the chat about how do you set boundaries with yourself? What exactly does that look like? Basically, what I was trying to say with that is the idea, think about studying for a test and you want to make sure you get that A. You could do 2 things. You could say, okay, I'm going to study for 10 hours. And if 10 hours isn't enough time to get that A, well, you know, we'll improve something for next time, or for that next test, we'll bump it up to, I don't know, 15 hours or what that might look like. So that's one approach. And that is like the self-boundary approach. I think typically what we do when we say that we have a test is, you know, the week before we're like, oh my gosh, there's a test. And then Saturday we study for it. Sunday we study for it. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We just keep studying for it because we don't set that end for ourselves. So I would say in that specific circumstance, that is setting that boundary of getting an A on this test. What is the difference in your mind for yourself between getting a B and getting an A on this test. Is it worth 10 hours to do that? If so, great. You know, where is that trade-off? So I don't want to confuse you. I don't want to confuse it too much. But that's kind of what it boils down to, is also not overworking yourself too, of saying, we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep going. And I hope that creates an A. That's not good. That's not good for you. And that's not a mentality you want to carry with you into your workplace or wherever that is after SJSU, because you'll be taken advantage of. Or you'll keep getting added projects and projects and projects to whatever you're doing after SJSU, and then you're in the same situation that you were in college. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you. That was a good one.
Right, so if we don't have any more questions, I'll go ahead and wrap us up for the day, just with a final thank you to all of you for coming and spending your Friday with us. I hope it was a great day, that you were able to take away some lessons, some advice. You got a chance to network, to connect with other students, with faculty, staff, and alumni. I am going to pop the link to the check-in form in the chat one more time. So if you didn't get a chance to check in, please check in for all the sessions you attended so we can follow up with you and make sure that you get links to all of the recordings from sessions today as well. And to close us out, just want to extend a thank you to Jordan. That was a wonderful session and a great way to end our conference and to lead us into the weekend. Hopefully you all get some time over the weekend to reflect on your own work-life balance and what taking care of yourself in our virtual environment looks like. And you're able to put a lot of these strategies that Jordan mentioned into practice for yourselves. So thank you, Jordan.
And thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun, and I hope there were at least a couple of things that you're able to take away and maybe put into your daily life. So thanks for sticking around on a Friday afternoon.